Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Form Check Friday. I am your host for today and always, Bryce. If you're interested in submitting your videos for a powerlifting form check, go ahead and click the annotation on the screen. Without any further ado, we're going to get stuck into where we left off last week. So we left off with Mr. Andrew here, 27 years old, 2 to 3 years of powerlifting. He says he wants to compete, plans to compete in the future. This was a part of 5x5 at 405, and he says he's stuck around a 600-pound squat. He says he's got a bit of a sticking point when the weight gets heavy, and mentioned some things about his belt as well. So he says he's been doing everything beltless because he's not bodybuilding anymore. He kind of outgrew his belt, building that powerlifter physique, and that he's got a new belt on the way, so hopefully that'll help. Now, honestly, looking at this squat, man, this is a friggin' beautiful squat. The only thing I'm noticing is these shoes and the fact that your heels are picking up just a little bit. So a couple different things we can look at. Now, number one, it looks like you're pretty comfortable. You've gotten to a 600-pound squat with this stance, so I would hesitate to mess around with this stance too much, but what I might do is try to get a shoe with a slight heel in it, and see if that allows you to keep a little bit better rooted through the foot, keeping pressure on the front and the heel all the way through the lift. It's also going to, these Nikes and things like this are just going to be squishy, so it's going to have a bit of interplay with your balance, specifically kind of how you're moving in the frontal plane. So if you're shifting forwards or backwards throughout your squat, a lot of times a bit of a firmer wedge, like a lot of the weightlifting shoes will be made with a chunk of wood, basically. Having a firmer soled shoe and something a little more heavy duty can definitely help. As well, a belt, especially where you're at, is going to help without a doubt. So hopefully you got a good belt, and I think that'll help quite a bit. The other thing I'm looking at a little bit is your upper back. Now you're pretty ribs down, kind of braced squatter. So maybe there's something you can do with your grip, but it also, I don't know, it looks pretty damn good, man. Maybe it's the bar position. It's tough when you get into somebody who's built up a 600-pound squat, because obviously you're experienced. You've been doing things a certain way for a while, and I think drastically changing those things is probably not the way to go. But yeah, even just putting more focus and maintaining tension in the upper back throughout. Looks like when we start, we're going into a little bit of extension here, and then on the way up, we're getting into more of a ribs down kind of forward brace. You can see how this back position has changed from the way that we descended, right? So we're descending. We'll put a line here for the hips so that we have a reference point. Now when we come back up, when the hips are there, you can see how this back angle's changed, right? So what I would do is try to get this back angle to start off with. So you could probably afford to hinge back a little bit more, put a tiny bit more pressure through the heels, and kind of really wedge that torso so that you can basically more or less, just like you're riding a ballast. Karwoski used to talk about riding ballast. But more or less, just see a little bit less movement in that trunk. So shoes and maybe a little bit tighter brace, which I do think the belt is going to help with. So, all right, Liam, doing some bench. We got the lovely Canadian Powerlifting Union flag back there. This looks like it's from Westerns, right on. I think he mentioned this is in Winnipeg. So powerlifting for a year and a half. There's a PR triple at 115. He says he gets fatigued and his elbows flare too much. Let's take a look here. We're definitely relaxing on the chest. We're not super tight. There's a distinct kind of you get to about here, and then it's everything kind of relaxes as the bar sinks in. So I think one thing you could do is move that touch down a little bit. That's going to tuck the elbows just a little bit and make it a lighter touch on the highest point of your chest. So instead of coming down with so much elbow flare, you're kind of flaring your elbows out before you start. So when we're more flared on the way down, that little bit of flare to get the bar moving back is going to result in more flare overall. So like I said, I think you could tuck in as long as you bring the touch point down, because what we don't want to happen is we don't want this to happen. We want this to happen. Does that make sense, right? Right now you're kind of out here, you're touching up here. I think if you tuck in, bring the touch point down, now you're here, right? We're still stacking sort of wrist and elbow. We're not over tucking and ending up elbows way in front of the bar, but I think that might help you get a little bit tighter. It's going to limit the range of motion. And also I can see when the legs lift up like that, that we're really relaxed in the leg drive on the way down. So we're totally relaxed on the chest here. I can hear you like breathing out a sigh of relief in the bottom. And hell no, man, we want to be tight as hell down there. Yeah, we want to be way tighter. So lower touch, a little bit more tuck, big chest up, big leg drive, the whole set, the whole rep during the pause, from unrack to re-rack, tight, tight, tight. A lot of times we see these lapses in tightness, and I think more often than not, we would benefit a lot from more tightness. All right, next we have Jasper. Jasper's doing some deadlifts. He's been powerlifting for about a year. This is his sumo deadlift. He says there's a fair bit of rounding. He wants to know if it's too much rounding. He also says that he feels way stronger in a rounded position. And this is a set of 4 at 85%, which is 275. All right, so I think that we can embrace some of this rounding, because like this looks okay. But I definitely think that we're like really intentionally hunching over in the upper back. So what you might be able to do to achieve a feeling like this without as much rounding, because guaranteed when you get to a limit lift, like this is just not as strong a structure. Like plainly put, this is just not going to be your strongest position, being that rounded forward, because your shoulders are out this way. So what we can do is push the chest out just a little bit, bring those shoulder blades down and leave them protracted, leave them forward, but pull them down as opposed to up and forward, because that's the big difference here. As soon as you go from shrugging up like you are, like right now you're shrugged up and rounding your back, try depressing your shoulder blades and allowing that same rounding, and you're gonna get a much stronger structure. This also means your lockouts look short and shy of where they could be, right? Like the shoulders are so far forward that it looks like we're really not locking out all the way. Like I get that protraction feels good and that little bit of a rounding position, I think that's fine, but let's get depression, shoulder blades down, instead of elevation and shrugging up. Pretty simple fix, I think. It also just looks pretty light. Yeah. But yeah, try that out with the shoulder blades. Small switch. I think that'll help you feel a little bit tighter with it. All right, this is Tedrick. He has been powerlifting for about 5 months. This is at an 8 at 425. So this dude's got a pretty big squat, and he's hoping to do his first meet in December. All right, man, let's take a look. This is some clean shoes. Nike. This is the new. What are they called? Romaleos? So kind of a similar thing with the upper body to what we were pointing out with Andrew earlier. It looks like when we're starting the squat, we're really trying to stay like super open and shoulders down and like almost overextended. Whereas I think you could almost brace a little bit more ribs down and maintain maintain a tighter trunk and see less movement throughout. Also, I'm not a huge big fan of this elbow position. I think your shoulder blades are shifting out of the hole, right? Especially if we watch this rep. See how the elbows come up like that? With the elbows coming up like that, we really can't maintain scapular depression, right? Like if the elbows come up, the scapula come up eventually anyways. And that's going to lead to the upper back kind of rounding forward, and it's going to put a lot of things out of position. So I would, let's see, maybe widen the grip or narrow the grip. But in any case, I would work to get these sort of the upper arm a little more in line with your torso in the bottom. So right here, The elbows are still really pointed back and up. And I would try to keep these elbows a little more this way so they're just in line with your trunk, so that when you come up, you can see, we see some flexion in the back, we see the elbows pick up, and we see that bar kind of roll forward. We can really see it on that rep specifically. Hits the bottom, and there's this big sort of like wave where the chain breaks. So I think part of it is that we're trying to be a little too extended on the way down. So embrace that lean, bring that chest down on top of the ribs a little bit, and then work on that upper back, shoulder, elbow position. Other than that though, like, I mean, 425 for a set of 8's a big set, man. You clearly have a big squat in you. Just got to work out some of the finer points. Depth looks like it's on, but again, we saw that bar really shift when you change directions out of the bottom, because there's a big change in how we're bracing and how we're fighting against the bar. All right, now we have Ben doing some bench press. He says he recently switched to flat foot from toe picking. He's been lifting for 4 years. This is 205 for a set of 4. He says that keeping his butt on the bench is tough, and he's a little bit concerned with the way the bar bends his wrists. So number one, I'd say don't worry about your wrists. Probably going to be totally fine. You know, the wrists are like anything else. You train it, and it gets stronger, and it adapts to what stresses and stimulus you put on it. Now, the big thing for me, and anybody who's followed this channel for any period of time is going to know, I'm going to say, widen that grip. This is such a long range of motion. You're almost on the smooth. Like, your grip is so narrow. You could probably widen the grip up, change that range of motion drastically, and after retraining it, you know, it may not feel amazing immediately, but I would at least use some like wide grip variations to play around with that and see if shortening that range of motion, see if a wider grip provides you some advantage. So the other thing is we're really loose at lockout. So we're okay out of the rack. First touch, we get like a lot of leg drive as we touch, but there's not a lot of leg drive on the way down. So that's another thing, more consistent leg drive, right? Try to be driving your legs, squeezing your butt, pumping your chest up all the way down during the touch and all the way up. The next thing is as we lock out, you can see, I didn't even make the noise right. There you go. The shoulders really kind of pop forward as you lock out. There we go. I'm getting my noises down. When we lock out, we want to think about locking out with the elbows, locking out with the triceps, not locking out with the shoulders. See how that change in my posture happened there? That's what we're doing. We're really heightening that bar. Now let me make a bit of a reference here for the height of the bar. There we go. So when we unrack, let's see, where's the bar? About the same spot actually. See how that pops up above, and then the bar is getting higher and the range of motion is getting longer. So we could use a lot more retraction. So whereas I was talking to a lifter earlier in this video about more depression, I was talking to Jasper with his deadlift and getting more depression. For you, I want to see more retraction. I want to see those shoulder blades pulled back more and down to try to build a bit of an arch, build a bit of stability in that shoulder, because you can tell by how much just the whole body's kind of shaking around at the top when you lock out. We're not staying tight in the back. It's kind of like, we got the rep and now we're gonna do another rep, and it's a totally separate thing. But what we need to do is think of it as a kind of extension of that first rep. We want to keep things the same. We want to maintain that tightness throughout the set. And I will continue to harp on that. But yeah, more tightness, play with widening the grip, more consistent leg drive. And yeah, I think other than that, you're off to a pretty good start. All right, up next, this is Nik. Nik's been powerlifting for 2 years. He says he struggles with rounding in his deadlift, and he's hoping we can take a look at it for him. So I'm gonna leave this. I want you to leave your constructive criticisms and critiques of Nik in the comments below, and we'll see everybody next week for Form Check Friday. Bye.